Good morning, Winterview, back again with another brief dialogue with his dear friend. Guess who? Annastacey. That's right. Once again, driving my car, as usual. Winterview, the travelling guru. I'm not a guru. Don't call me that. This dialogue is on the mechanics of duality. Talked a lot about this. Never hurts to revisit. Had a coffee? You can probably tell by the pep in my voice. Stop whispering, X. Get to the point. Good point. So, I've just left home. About 2 minutes ago, I left my home. I am now away from my home. How do I know that? How do I know I left my home? Good question. That's pretty obvious. Somewhere in the mental, cognitive, emotional apparatus of the organism, the forest creature we call the human, there was a declaration of sorts. A point of reference was established. Something was pegged in the ground, a stake was driven into the soil, and a declaration of ownership was made. I, this entity, me, own this house or this home is mine. What happened in that instant? Well, a few things. Obviously, there was the mental reference point, the declaration itself, and of course the ownership, the key or core ingredient to this puzzle. Once that was made, the rest was easy. Everything flowed on naturally from that. All the thinking flowed on effortlessly, unlike the word effortlessly, which is hard to say, paradoxically. So, I left my home. I am now away from home. The mind's thinking flows on from that declaration, that point of reference. Now, if I was travelling a long way from home, which I'm not, but let's just pretend, I could possibly feel homesick. I could miss my home. Why would that happen? Because wherever I was that was not home would represent being away from home. I'm labouring this point, and it seems obvious, but this is how the self works, and this is how it drives the thinking, the unpleasant thinking especially, around the self, the person. Once that declaration is made, is believed in, is locked in, and totally owned, then it all flows on from there. Thoughts of me, thoughts of I, thoughts of everything in reference to the self flow on effortlessly. Now, to quote or misquote comedian, now deceased unfortunately, Mitch Hedberg, he said something to this effect: whenever you're lost in the woods, fuck it, build a house, then you're not lost, then you're at home. How profound a statement that Mitch probably didn't realise maybe the full magnitude of that gag. Always got a good laugh, dear Mitch. Fuck it, build a house, then you're not lost anymore, you're home. That is, in essence, a beautiful summary of the quest or the journey, the so-called journey for liberation or enlightenment. The seeker is permanently away from home. The seeker cannot land anywhere. No matter if the seeker was back at their literal home, they would feel still somehow something's wrong, something's missing, and that's because really, in essence, at the end of the day, it's an imagined person, it's a concept. Of course, the seeker doesn't realize that, or the seeking doesn't realize that. So the mind endlessly reports on the seeker, the life of the person, endlessly reporting on it in terms of points of reference, things that it thinks are absolute. We see this in the clinic, day in, day out, with our patients who experience mental health problems. You could argue that a lot of this seeking and searching, etc., manifests as mental health concerns for those who have vulnerabilities to mental health concerns. The individuals who I see in a clinical basis constantly reporting the problems of the self, the problems that they have. These are their problems. Not all the cases, just be clear, but a great deal, especially in the mood disorder category, depression, anxiety category. This person that they think they are is deeply flawed. They have staked a claim of ownership and authority, not only on the existence of the self, but the imagined things that this self should do, should be doing, should have done, must do in the future, and so on and so forth. And when it doesn't come to fruition as imagined, depression and anxiety. So, getting back to the core point, that this mind, would say, stakes claims on so many different things to give reference points, to create a world that it understands. It's all about understanding for the mind. Everything has to be understood, so it's known, so it's safe, so it's predictable, etc. But it kills the world in a sense. It kills life. It doesn't really, I'm just being a little bit poetic, but it does dull or deaden the aliveness. Things become known and boring to the mind. Once the mind locks on as I know this, it's inevitable that it will become intolerant of it, whatever that it is. So let's flip it all around. Let's be radical. Well, let me be radical because I'm doing the talking. I'm going to flip it around. What is going on here with the mind? What does it think it's doing? What are you doing, mind? What are you staking all these claims willy-nilly without examining their veracity? No, don't blame the mind. It does, or the brain. It's just doing exactly what it was designed to do. Exactly. Couldn't have been any other way. Beautifully played, mind. Beautifully played. So let's go into a brief little exploration of the immediacy and see what the mind's doing. Now, of course, the caveat is that because we're exploring this with the mind, we can never really contact what has been spoken about. It's just not going to happen. The mind will always endlessly frame whatever is heard or spoken into the concepts that are pre-existing. Occasionally you might get a little woo feeling when there is no concept, there's no way for the mind to frame it. The mind will have a little spin, might feel a bit euphoric, a bit, oh, I'm getting enlightened for a moment, for an hour, for a day, and then it'll inevitably come up with a new concept to explain that experience, and in its own inimicable, can't even say that word, let's say inevitable way, it will kill the experience. Bless its cotton socks, the mind. No, secretly, we do love our minds. Let's not be mind bashers. It's unfair. And the mind, at the end of the day, is not the problem here. It is not the problem. It feels like the problem. It feels like it's an awful thing most of the time, creating these terrible narratives about how crap your life is and how awful it is that you're not enlightened, and so on and so forth. You don't have to use the word enlightened, just how awful your life is because it's not where you want it to be, more or less. Poor mind, blessed. But the mind, remember, is only flowing on naturally from the claims that it has staked as fact. Once it is believed in as fact, once it has solidified it as reality, at least in its own estimation of reality, all thinking flows on from there naturally. I must be away from home because when I look around I can't see my home. I've got to be away from it. If I'm away from my home, I might get homesick. Or I need to get home. A beautiful description of seeking. I need to get home because I think there is a home. And I think I'm away from it. See what I did there? A clever little double metaphor thing. Okay. So, let's go back to an earlier dialogue. Let's revisit it. I think I talked about the steering wheel. God, it was a boring example, but it's the best I can do because I'll let you in on a little secret. Because I'm in a car and it's the one thing that's just right in front of my face. Right there. Here it is. Got to talk about it. But it's a good example because at least it's something that's kind of tactile, and even if you don't have a steering wheel as I talk about this, you can approximate it somehow with a proxy steering wheel. The toilet bowl is round, you could hold that with your hands. You could pick up a watermelon, you could get a hula hoop or a frisbee or a plate. No, you don't have to, really, you don't. But if you want to hold something as you listen to these words, might help. Understand. So, let's go back to this steering wheel. Here it is. There is the immediate contact sensation, we'll call it, of plasticky, hard, plasticky, slight sponge, textury thing. Now, everything that flows on from that, well, even that is concept, but everything that flows on from that is concept upon concept. Let's have a look on how that works. The first concept is that my hand is on the wheel, which requires me, I. So that has to be locked in. The idea of a hand is locked in. And this is the tricky bit here, the distance between the two, the my and the hand, the hand and the wheel even. There's the duality right there. My hand, or the me, we'll call it, on the wheel. That's the duality. My hand, or me, is touching the wheel. I'm touching the wheel. I and the wheel. I'm labouring this point. I'm labouring the point. Now let's just intellectually get rid of the I. Just chop it up. Chum, gone. And report more accurately on the experience, if that's possible. Plasticky, hard, circular, dimpled, or ridged thing. That's what's happening. That's the immediate, so-called immediate experience. And how is the experience known? Because of the conscious or awakeness, if you prefer, or whatever, awareness. Let's not get too pernickety about the terminology. Let's not think back to other spiritual texts or manuals or dialogues about what the terms mean. Just the everyday, ordinary use of the word is good enough. The awareness of the touching, the awareness of the plasticky feeling, right? Now there's a duality right there too. See how it sneakily creeps back in? Awareness of. So there is still implied there is someone who has awareness or is aware, and it is aware of something else, something outside of itself. See that sneaky little gets right in there before you even have time to scratch your bum, puts a duality right there. Okay. Let us examine more closely this apparent duality. There certainly is awareness, granted, because if there wasn't awareness, then how would it be known that anything is actually happening? Tick. Let's put that little tick there. Okay, let's give it that. Even though at the end of the day it's a conceptual way to think about it, we gotta put our foot down somewhere, otherwise we can't talk, or I can't talk. So there's awareness. Now, is there any difference? This is where it gets real tricky for the mind, real tricky. But try and follow. Is there any difference between the awareness, so that awakeness, that here I am alive, present thing, is there any difference between that and the actual experience itself? That's the hard, plasticky, steering wheely thing. Is there any any actual division, any separation between the two? Now, I'm going to answer it for you because you're not there, whoever you are. As best as can be thought about, at least, or experienced in this little micro exercise that we're doing, I would have to insert artificially this concept of I'm aware of it. I'd have to put the little I in there to make it a nice, neat sentence. But we've agreed to hold the I at bay, to just leave the I alone for a little while. Just put it aside, because we understand intellectually, at least, that's a concept. There might not be an I, but there certainly seems to be awareness. Yet, if there isn't an I that is aware, then what the freak is aware? Now I'm going to put something to you, which again, when it's put, will be heard intellectually, but let's just put it out there. That the awareness itself and the experience of the hard wheel are not two separate things. The experience, here it comes, the experience of the wheel is the awareness itself. Did I blow your mind? I hope I did. The experience of hard plasticky is the awareness itself, and flipping it around the other way, if there was no experience of the plasticky steering wheely thing, we're calling it experience, there'd be no awareness. Or, alternatively, flipping, see how many ways I can put this. The awareness or the experience would possibly be on something else, like the feeling of the air on my face or something. Wow, I think I did myself then. I flipped it around 3 ways. You should definitely be enlightened by now, by the end of that description. That should have been the thing that pushed you into the edge, into the spiritual zone of bliss and all-knowing golden light thing. See? So, no, I'm just joking, of course. This is just an intellectual exploration, nothing more. It can't be more than that, because we're talking with language and it's the mind and blah blah blah. So, is there the experience itself, the so-called contact with matter, material matter, is the awareness, or is the aliveness itself? This is where the mystics of traditional teachings would say everything is consciousness. Everything is consciousness. And this is why everything is consciousness. Because I cannot separate unless it's artificially separated with a concept, as in I have the awareness over here of the experience of the world out there. If I do that, then of course everything is consciousness does not make sense at all. It's like, what are you saying? Everything is consciousness? No, I'm conscious. No, 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 no. You are not conscious. There is only... Now we're going to get a bit mystical. Therefore, there is only consciousness which is manifested in whatever experience it is. Air conditioner on face presently, heat on knee from sun, steering wheel, of course, the view in front of me. There's another thing. Thoughts popping in and out, like hope the waves are good, all that sort of stuff. Isn't that interesting? So, getting way back to the beginning of this brief dialogue now, the mind beautifully, seamlessly creates this world by this core duality, this I, this me, who it stakes its claim as a fact. This is a fact, according to the mind. I exist separately as a person, as an independent entity, and therefore everything flows on from that. Therefore the world is happening to me, or I'm experiencing the world. Every experience that happens is therefore my experience. See how it just flows on naturally, no effort required. And it presumes, innocently nor naively, that its position or opinion on the existence of the self is a fact. That's not even questioned. And then the poor mind, getting itself into a muddle, because it's so easy to get into a muddle with that as a fact, starts to try and fix its own personal problems by looking at the world and figuring out, what do I need to do something, I need to fix the world. I'm uncomfortable, I'm always away from home, metaphorically. I'm always not there, so I always need to somehow try and get back to home. I might try drugs, I might try excitement, I might try egotism, I might become the best at the world, I'll become famous, I'll become amazing, everyone will love me, I'll have tons of lovers, I'll become really humble. That's what I'll do. I'll be super duper humble, and God will reward me with sort of a humility award, golden light. I'll become nice, I'll become the nice person. Anything and everything, the mind will try and do it to bring the self home, to bring you back home where you're missing from, apparently. All the while missing the essential core reality, we'll call it, of life, which is just the conscious awakeness experience, whatever you want to call it, all rolled into one. That's all there is. That's all there ever is. And even this is where it gets more tricky. Even the thoughts about all of this are it as well. So therefore that statement by Nisargadatta Maharaj, I love saying that word, or name I should say, I am that, makes total sense. Now, this even the concept of being a person, I am that. Do you know? Even that as well. I am that. But not just that. We're talking everything. So the contact with the steering wheel that appears in that consciousness, awareness, I am that. The air conditioning on the face, I am that. It never ends. And of course I'm breaking it down with concepts. It's the totality of experience. We'll call it the world. Just being very cautious that there is no world that we know of, just as a concept. It exists as a concept. So we're away from home because the mind has landed on these reference points. It thinks it's absolute, but it's doing only thing it can do. Natural behavior. It's not a aberrant, weird behavior. It's totally natural. There is no self. There is no self. We cannot really contact this essential isness that is being spoken about with language or thought or concept. Just can't. There's no meeting on those two. You can use incredibly poetic terminology and be very clever, but you can't contact it. And you'll notice that in the dialogue when I was trying to break it all down, even as amazingly intelligent as I seem to be, I can't get there in language. But we make that concession. We say, okay, fair enough, you can't get there in language. We're not going to hold these definitions as totally absolute, hold you to them as absolute facts. Anyway, I think I've done enough speak for the morning. I hope this dialogue was some way interesting for you. And it's time for X to kick back, park the car, try and grab a few waves, and then chillax for the rest of the day. Once again, your comments are welcome. Thanks for listening.